The white hull of the UESS Mercy's Grace gleamed against the black of space as it moved through the Kepler sector. The massive ship was over 2 kilometers long and painted with red crosses that could be seen from a great distance. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge watching the stars through the main window. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple tie, and her uniform showed the wear of someone who had been in space for many months. "Captain, we have a distress signal," called Lieutenant Torres from his station. "It's coming from Grid 77 Alpha." Elena turned to face him. "What kind of signal?" "Medical emergency. Ship in distress with many wounded on board." Elena nodded. This was what they did. The Mercy's Grace was the largest hospital ship that Earth had ever built. It carried over 2,000 doctors, nurses, and medical workers. They moved through the war zones of space, helping anyone who needed it. It did not matter if they were human, alien, or enemy. If someone was hurt, the Mercy's Grace would help them. "Set course for the signal," Elena ordered. "Tell Dr. Chen to prepare the medical bays." Dr. Sarah Chen was already moving through the ship when the message reached her. She was a small woman with black hair and quick hands that had saved thousands of lives. She had been working on hospital ships for 15 years, and she knew what needed to be done. "All medical teams to stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We have incoming wounded. Prepare for mass casualties." The medical bays of the Mercy's Grace were like small cities. There were hundreds of beds, operating rooms, and machines that could heal almost any injury. The doctors and nurses moved with practiced skill as they got ready for whatever was coming. When they reached the coordinates, Elena saw a ship that made her heart sink. It was a Vorthak destroyer, one of the big warships that the Vorthak Empire used to attack human colonies. The ship was badly damaged. Holes had been torn in its metal sides, and it was spinning slowly in space. "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres, "it's a Vorthak ship." Elena knew what that meant. The Vorthak were humanity's worst enemies in this war. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and sharp teeth. They had been fighting humans for 3 years, and they showed no mercy to prisoners. Many of Elena's friends had died fighting them, but the Mercy's Grace had rules. They helped everyone. "Open a channel," Elena said. The face that appeared on the screen was typical Vorthak: gray skin, black eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. But this one looked desperate. "Human ship," the Vorthak said in broken human language. "We have 800 wounded. Many will die soon. We ask for help." Elena could see the pain in the alien's eyes. Even though they were enemies, she could not let people die. "This is Captain Vasquez of the hospital ship Mercy's Grace. We will help you. Prepare to transfer your wounded." The Vorthak on the screen looked surprised. "You will help us? Even though we are Vorthak?" "We help everyone," Elena said simply. For the next 6 hours, small ships moved back and forth between the destroyer and the Mercy's Grace. The human doctors worked without stopping, as wounded Vorthak filled the medical bays. These were not the fearsome warriors that humans feared. They were hurt and scared beings who just wanted to live. Dr. Chen moved from bed to bed, checking each patient. Some had burns from energy weapons. Others had broken bones or cuts from metal. A few were so badly hurt that they might not survive. "Doctor," called Nurse Williams, "this one is asking for you." Dr. Chen walked over to see a Vorthak who was less hurt than the others. He had bandages on his chest and one arm, but he could talk. "You are the chief healer?" the Vorthak asked. "I am Dr. Chen. How are you feeling?" "Better than I should be," the Vorthak said. "I am Commander Thektar. I do not understand." "Why do you help us?" "We are your enemies." Dr. Chen sat down beside his bed. "Because you are hurt and we are healers. That is enough." Commander Thektar stared at her with his black eyes. In all his years of fighting, he had never seen anything like this. When Vorthak found wounded humans, they either left them to die or killed them quickly. The idea of helping an enemy was strange to him. "My people say that humans are weak," he said slowly. "They say you are soft and cannot fight properly." "Maybe we are soft," Dr. Chen said with a smile. "But being soft is not always bad." For 3 days and nights, the doctors and nurses worked to save the Vorthak wounded. They did not sleep much. They ate when they could. But they did not stop working. Elena walked through the medical bays and saw her people treating the Vorthak with the same care they gave to humans. Commander Thektar watched everything. He saw human doctors giving their own blood to save Vorthak soldiers. He saw nurses staying awake for days to watch over the most hurt patients. He saw Dr. Chen cry when they lost a young Vorthak who reminded her of her own son. On the third day, a young human doctor named Marcus was working on a Vorthak with serious burns. The alien was in great pain and kept trying to attack anyone who came near. But Dr. Marcus did not give up. He talked to the Vorthak softly and worked carefully to heal his burns. Why? The wounded Vorthak asked when the pain medicine started to work. Because that is what we do, Dr. Marcus said. We heal people. But I have killed humans. I have destroyed your ships. Dr. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Maybe you have. But right now you are just someone who needs help. That is all that matters. When it was over, they had saved 600 of the 800 wounded Vorthak. 200 had been too badly hurt to save. But the human doctors had tried their best even for them. They made sure they did not die in pain. Captain Elena stood with Commander Thektar as the rescued Vorthak prepared to leave on a ship that had come to pick them up. I do not understand your people, Thektar said to her. You could have let us die. You could have taken us prisoner. Instead, you saved us. Would your people have done the same for us? Elena asked. Thektar looked down. No, we would not have. Then maybe that is something your people need to think about, Elena said. As the Vorthak ship moved away, Dr. Chen stood beside Elena on the bridge. They watched until it disappeared among the stars. Do you think it will make a difference? Dr. Chen asked. Elena shrugged. Maybe not. But we did what was right. Sometimes that is enough. Neither of them knew that far away. Admiral Krovex of the Vorthak Empire had been watching the rescue. He had seen his own people saved by humans, and it made him angry. In his mind, mercy was weakness, and weakness had to be destroyed. The Mercy's Grace continued on its mission, moving through space to help whoever needed it. The red crosses on its white hull shined in the starlight like a promise that help would always come to those who needed it. But promises, Elena knew, were fragile things in a galaxy at war. Admiral Krovex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, staring at the reports from his spies. His forearms moved restlessly as he read about the human hospital ship that had saved his people. The gray skin around his black eyes was darker than usual, showing his anger. Weakness, he growled to his officers. The humans show weakness, and my own people accept it like fools. Commander Vectos, his second-in-command, shifted nervously. Admiral, perhaps the humans were just following their medical laws. Silence. Krovex's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. There are no laws in war except victory. The humans think their mercy makes them noble. I will show them what their mercy really makes them. 3 weeks had passed since the Mercy's Grace had saved the Vorthak wounded. The hospital ship was now moving toward a new emergency call. A civilian transport ship carrying families from 3 different worlds had been attacked by pirates. There were children on board who needed help. Captain Elena Vasquez studied the distress signal as her ship moved through space. The transport was called the Star of Hope, and it carried over 400 people. Most were refugees trying to escape the war zones. How long until we reach them? She asked Lieutenant Torres. 6 hours, Captain. Elena nodded. 6 hours was not too long. If the wounded could hang on, the Mercy's Grace would save them. That was what they did. That was what they had always done. In the medical bays, Dr. Sarah Chen was checking supplies with her team. Nurse Williams was counting blood packs while Dr. Marcus prepared the children's medical ward. Make sure we have the small surgery tools ready, Dr. Chen told her team. If there are children hurt, we will need everything perfect. Commander Thektar was also on the Mercy's Grace. He had asked to stay and learn about human medicine. The Vorthak leaders were angry with him, but he did not care. What he had seen on this ship had changed him. He was helping in the supply rooms when the alarm started ringing. All hands to emergency stations. Elena's voice came over the ship's communication system. Unknown ships approaching. They are not responding to our signals. Thektar felt ice in his blood. He knew those ship signatures. They belonged to Admiral Krovex. On the bridge, Elena watched as 5 Vorthak warships came out of hyperspace around them. The Mercy's Grace was alone and had no weapons. It did not need weapons because it was a hospital ship. Everyone in the galaxy knew that hospital ships were protected by the Galactic Medical Neutrality Accords. Open a channel to the lead ship, Elena ordered. The face that appeared on the screen made Thektar gasp. It was Admiral Krovex, and his black eyes were full of hate. Human vessel, Krovex said. You are flying in Vorthak space without permission. Admiral, this is the hospital ship Mercy's Grace, Elena replied calmly. We are responding to a medical emergency. Under the Galactic Medical Accords, we have the right to— I know what you are, Krovex interrupted. You are the ship that makes my people weak with your false mercy. Elena felt a cold fear growing in her chest. Admiral, we have medical neutrality. We have saved your people. You have made them soft. Krovex roared. You have made them believe that enemies can be friends. That weakness should be rewarded. I will not allow this sickness to spread. The channel closed. A moment later, Lieutenant Torres turned pale. Captain, they are charging weapons. Elena could not believe what she was hearing. Sound general alarm. All medical staff to protected areas. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them. The first plasma torpedo hit the Mercy's Grace before she could finish. The great white ship shook like a toy in a giant's hand. Red lights flashed as the shields failed. More torpedoes followed, tearing through the hull where the medical bays were located. In the children's ward, Dr. Marcus was thrown to the floor as the explosions rocked the ship. Around him, small beds with young patients from different worlds were scattered like broken toys. A little human girl named Amy was crying for her mother. A young Zephyrian boy with blue skin was bleeding from a cut on his head. Stay calm, Dr. Marcus shouted over the noise. We are going to get you to safety. But there was nowhere safe to go. The Vorthak ships surrounded them and more weapons fire was coming. Dr. Chen was in the main medical bay when the Vorthak soldiers broke through the hull. They came in wearing battle armor and carrying plasma rifles. Their gray faces showed no emotion as they looked at the wounded beings lying in the hospital beds. Please, Dr. Chen said, standing in front of her patients. These are wounded civilians. They cannot fight. Under galactic law, the lead Vorthak soldier shot her without saying a word. Dr. Chen fell to the floor, her blood spreading across the white tiles. The soldiers moved through the medical bay like machines. They shot the wounded humans first, then the aliens. They did not care if the patients were soldiers or civilians, adults or children. They killed them all. Commander Thektar ran through the corridors trying to reach the main medical bay. He could hear the weapons fire and the screaming. When he reached the bay, he saw his own people murdering helpless patients. Stop, he shouted, throwing himself between a Vorthak soldier and a wounded human. They are defenseless. This is against all honor. The soldier looked at him with disgust. You have been infected by human weakness, Thektar. The admiral said this might happen. The soldier's rifle swung toward Thektar. The blast threw him backward against a wall. As he lay bleeding, he watched his people destroy everything the humans had built to help others. Captain Elena tried to reach the main communication room to send a warning to other ships. But the corridors were full of smoke and fire. She could hear her crew dying all around her. When she reached the children's ward, she found Dr. Marcus holding little Amy in his arms. Both of them had been shot. Captain, Dr. Marcus whispered, I got most of the children to the escape pods, but the Vorthak shot the pods before they could get away. Elena knelt beside him, tears running down her face. Why would they do this? We helped them. We saved their people. Dr. Marcus coughed and blood came from his mouth. Because they are afraid of us. They are afraid that their own people will learn to be like us. Elena held his hand until he died. Then she made her way to the emergency communication station. Her fingers shook as she activated the system. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the hospital ship Mercy's Grace, she said into the recorder. We are under attack by Vorthak forces led by Admiral Krovex. They are killing wounded patients and medical staff. They are killing children. An explosion shook the ship. Elena could hear Vorthak soldiers getting closer. We followed all the medical laws, she continued. We helped their wounded. We saved their people, and now they are murdering ours. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to remember what happened here. The door burst open. Vorthak soldiers filled the room, their weapons pointed at her. Elena looked at them with no fear in her eyes. You can kill us all, she said, but you cannot kill what we stood for. The leader of the soldiers raised his rifle. Watch us try. The recording cut off as the weapon fired. Hours later, the Mercy's Grace was a burning wreck floating in space. Admiral Krovex looked at it from his bridge and felt satisfied. The human softness had been burned away. Now they would learn that mercy was a luxury they could not afford. Set course for base, he ordered. Our work here is done, but he was wrong. The work was just beginning. The automated emergency beacon on the Mercy's Grace was still working, and it was broadcasting everything to the galaxy. Soon everyone would see what had happened to the hospital ship. Soon, humanity would know that their mercy had been repaid with murder, And when they knew, they would remember that mercy was a choice they made from a position of strength, a choice they could always change. The emergency beacon from the Mercy's Grace reached Earth 17 hours after the attack. The signal traveled through the communication networks that connected all the worlds, carrying with it video recordings that would change everything. Admiral Marcus Kane was eating breakfast in his quarters on Luna Base when his aide rushed in. Commander Sarah Potter was pale and shaking, something Kane had never seen before in 15 years of working together. "Admiral," she said, "you need to see this immediately." Kane put down his coffee and followed her to the communication center. The room was filled with officers staring at screens with shocked faces. Some were crying. Others looked angry enough to break something. "Show me," Kane said quietly. The video began with Captain Elena Vasquez speaking calmly into the recorder. Kane had met Elena twice. She was a good officer who cared more about saving lives than winning medals. As he watched her final message, something cold and dark grew in his chest. Then came the recordings from the ship's security systems. Kane watched Vorthak soldiers murder wounded patients in their beds. He saw them shoot doctors who were trying to protect their patients. He saw them kill children who were too hurt to even sit up. When the video showed little Amy being shot while Dr. Marcus held her, Kane's hands began to shake. When it showed Commander Thektar being gunned down by his own people for trying to protect the wounded, Kane's jaw tightened like stone. "How many died?" he asked. 1,837, Commander Potter replied. "The entire crew and all the patients." Kane stared at the screen for a long time. Then he stood up slowly. "Get me a secure line to the Sol Defense Council," he said, "and activate the emergency mobilization codes. All of them." On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Every television, every computer, every communication device showed the recordings from the Mercy's Grace. People watched in horror as the galaxy's most sacred law was broken in the worst possible way. Dr. James. Chen sat in his apartment in New York, watching the news report about his daughter Sarah. The reporter was talking about her work on hospital ships, about how many lives she had saved. But all James could see was the moment when the Vorthak soldier shot her for trying to protect her patients. Around the world, similar scenes played out in thousands of homes. Families learning that their loved ones had died not in battle, but while doing acts of mercy. Parents, children, wives, and husbands, all killed for the crime of helping others. In the Galactic Council building on Neutral Station 7, the alien representatives watched the recordings with growing shock. Even species that had been fighting each other for centuries respected the medical neutrality laws. What the Vorthak had done was beyond understanding. Ambassador Zara Okafor of Earth stood before the full council. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but today those eyes were filled with a quiet fury that made even the bravest council members uncomfortable. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice calm and controlled. 3 years ago, humanity joined this galactic community. We came in peace. We followed your laws. We signed your treaties. She gestured to the screens around the room that still showed images from the Mercy's Grace. For 3 years, our hospital ships have traveled through war zones, saving lives. We have saved Vorthak, Zephyrian, Altarian, and dozens of other species. Over 100,000 beings are alive today, because human doctors and nurses risked their lives to help them. Ambassador Okafor paused and looked around the room. The silence was complete. Yesterday, Admiral Krovex of the Vorthak Empire decided that this mercy was a weakness to be destroyed. He attacked a clearly marked hospital ship. He murdered doctors, nurses, and patients. He killed children in their hospital beds. The Zephyrian representative, a tall blue being with 6 arms, spoke up. "Ambassador, the Zephyrian Collective condemns this action in the strongest possible terms. This attack violates everything we stand for." Even the Corvin delegate, whose people were known for their aggressive nature, nodded agreement. The Corvin clans honor strength in battle, but there is no honor in killing healers. Ambassador Okafor nodded. "Thank you. But words are not enough. Admiral Krovex and his fleet must face justice for their crimes." The Vorthak representative, General Kakthor, looked uncomfortable. "The Empire does not recognize the authority of this council to judge our military actions." "Then perhaps," Ambassador Okafor said softly, "it is time for humanity to make our own justice." The words sent a chill through the council chamber. Everyone knew that humans had been holding back in this war. Their technology was advanced, but they had chosen to fight defensively, trying to minimize casualties. If they decided to stop holding back on Earth, Admiral Kane stood before the Seoul Defense Council in an emergency session. The 12 most powerful leaders of humanity sat around a table that had been used to make decisions about peace. Today they would decide about war. "Admiral," said President Chen, "what are you requesting?" Kane's voice was steady and cold. "I am requesting authorization to deploy the entire Sol fleet to the Kepler sector. Full mobilization. No restrictions on technology use." Councilmember Rodriguez looked shocked. "Admiral, that's 400 ships, more than we've ever deployed at once." "The Vorthak crossed a line," Kane replied. "They didn't just attack our people. They attacked the very idea of mercy itself. If we let this stand, no healer will ever be safe again." President Chen leaned forward. "What exactly are you planning, Admiral?" Kane's eyes were like ice. "Justice. Admiral Krovex committed war crimes. Under galactic law, he must face trial or face the consequences. I intend to give him that choice." The vote was unanimous. Across human space, ships that had been waiting in hidden bases began to move. The great dreadnoughts Retribution and Furious Angel activated their systems for the first time since they were built. Cruiser squadrons that had never been seen by alien eyes prepared for deployment. In the asteroid mining stations, workers watched as ships they had been building in secret for 2 years finally revealed themselves. Humanity had not been idle during this war. They had been preparing. On Zephyrian Prime, the collective consciousness that ruled the blue-skinned beings calculated possibilities. Their quantum computers ran millions of scenarios and reached the same conclusion each time. The humans were about to show their true capabilities for the first time. "Should we warn the Vorthak?" asked one of the collective voices. "No," came the reply. "They made their choice when they murdered healers." Even among the Vorthak themselves, word of the attack was spreading. Commander Thektar had survived the attack and been rescued by a human patrol ship. From his medical bed on Earth, he spoke to reporters about what he had seen. "I watched the humans save my people," he said, his voice weak but clear. "They gave their own blood to save Vorthak soldiers. They worked for days without sleep to heal my wounded comrades, and then I watched my own people murder them for this kindness." The interview was broadcast on every Vorthak channel. For the first time, many Vorthak began to question their leaders. Some began to ask why helping others was considered weakness. Admiral Krovex tried to control the damage. He gave speeches about Vorthak's strength and human weakness. But even among his own fleet, doubt was growing. His officers remembered the human doctors who had saved their friends and family members. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kane watched as the largest fleet in human history assembled around Earth. 400 ships, each one carrying the hopes of humanity for justice. "Admiral," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving messages from human colonies across the galaxy. They're all saying the same thing. What's that?" "Make them pay." Kane nodded. "Open a channel to all ships." When every captain was listening, Kane spoke the words that would be remembered for 1,000 years. "Today, we march not for conquest, but for justice. Not for revenge, but for the protection of all those who heal others. The Vorthak Empire has declared that mercy is weakness. We will show them what mercy truly is, a choice made by those strong enough to protect it." As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Kane made one final transmission. It was broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. "Admiral Krovex, by the authority of the Galactic Medical Neutrality Accords, you and your fleet are hereby designated war criminals. Surrender for trial or face the consequences. You have 24 hours. The transmission cut off. Across the galaxy, every species waited to see what would happen when humanity's patience finally ended. They would not have to wait long. Admiral Krovex received humanity's ultimatum while standing on the bridge of his flagship in the Vorthak home system. Around him, his officers watched nervously as their admiral read the message. When he finished, he threw the communication device against the wall. 24 hours? He snarled. "The humans dare to give me an ultimatum? I'm a Vorthak admiral. I do not take orders from soft-skinned weaklings." His second-in-command, Commander Vectos, stepped forward carefully. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider their offer." "The galactic laws about medical ships are written by cowards," Krovex roared. "There are only 2 laws in this universe. The strong rule and the weak die. Today I proved which one humanity is." But Vectos was not convinced. He had seen the reports about the human fleet that was coming. 400 ships, more than the Vorthak Empire had ever faced at once. Across Vorthak space, word of the human ultimatum spread quickly. On military bases and civilian worlds, Vorthak citizens watched the recordings from the Mercy's Grace. Many had been saved by human medical ships during the war. They began to ask uncomfortable questions. General Kakthor, the Vorthak representative to the Galactic Council, sent urgent messages to the Empire's leadership. The humans are not bluffing, he warned. Their fleet is massive and using technology we have never seen before. We should negotiate. But Admiral Krovex ignored all such advice. In his mind, the humans were weak creatures who hid behind their mercy. When faced with real war, they would break like all weak things. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like a force of nature. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, watching star charts as his fleet approached Vorthak territory. Around him, his officers prepared for the largest military operation in human history. "Admiral," reported Captain Silva from the tactical station, "we're receiving surrender requests from several Vorthak worlds." Kane was not surprised. As news of the hospital ship attack spread, more Vorthak had begun to question their government. Entire planets were declaring neutrality rather than fight for leaders who murdered healers. "Accept all legitimate surrenders," Kane ordered. "But make it clear, we want Krovex and his fleet. Anyone protecting them will be considered hostile." The first contact came at the border system of Kepler-7. A Vorthak patrol squadron of 12 ships tried to intercept the human fleet. They demanded that the humans turn back or face destruction. Admiral Kane's response was swift and precise. The human ships used weapons the Vorthak had never seen before. Quantum disruptors that shut down enemy shields in seconds. Plasma beams that cut through armor like paper. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Vorthak squadron was disabled. But here was the difference. Instead of destroying the helpless ships, the humans boarded them and took the crews prisoner. Every wounded Vorthak was given medical treatment. Every prisoner was treated according to galactic law. Commander Zeknal of the patrol squadron found himself in the medical bay of a human ship, being treated by the same kind of doctor that Admiral Krovex had murdered. The human doctor, a young woman named Dr. Park, worked carefully to heal the burns on his arm. "Why do you help me?" Zeknal asked. "I just tried to kill your people." Dr. Park looked at him with sad eyes. "Because Dr. Chen taught us that every life matters. Even after what your people did to her, she would still want us to save you." News of the battle spread quickly. The humans had won easily, but they had also shown mercy to their prisoners. This confused many Vorthak, who had been taught that humans were either weak or cruel. Admiral Kane's fleet continued deeper into Vorthak space, moving toward their main military bases. At each system, the pattern repeated. Vorthak forces tried to stop them. The humans disabled their ships with frightening efficiency. Then they offered medical aid to the wounded. At the Althar base, Admiral Kane addressed the Vorthak commander directly. "Commander Kelvak," he said over the communication channel, "I know you have family members who were saved by our medical ships. I'm offering you a choice. Stand down and let us pass, or I will remove you. But either way, your wounded will be cared for." Commander Kelvak looked at the human fleet surrounding his base. He thought about his daughter, who had been saved by human doctors after a shuttle accident. He thought about the recordings of the Mercy's Grace attack. "I surrender," he said quietly. "My ships will not fire." Admiral Krovex watched these battles from his command center and felt rage building inside him. Every defeat made him angrier. Every report of humans showing mercy to Vorthak prisoners felt like a personal insult. "They think they are proving something," he told his remaining officers. "They think their mercy makes them noble. I will show them what their mercy really gets them." He ordered his fleet to fall back to Vorthak Prime, the homeworld of the Empire. If the humans wanted him, they would have to come to the heart of Vorthak space. There, surrounded by billions of his own people, he would make his final stand. Commander Thektar was still recovering on Earth when he heard about Krovex's plan. Despite his injuries from the attack on the Mercy's Grace, he insisted on speaking with Admiral Kane. "Admiral," he said during their video call, "Krovex is planning something terrible. He will use civilian populations as shields. He believes humans are too soft to risk innocent lives." Kane's face was grim. "What do you think he'll do?" "He will position his ships around our cities and space stations. Tektar replied. "He will force you to choose between justice and innocent lives, and when you hesitate, he will attack." Kane was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for the warning, Commander. Your people are lucky to have someone like you." As the human fleet approached Vorthak Prime, intelligence reports confirmed Tektar's fears. Krovix had positioned his remaining ships throughout the home system, using space stations and orbital cities as cover. Any attack on his fleet would endanger millions of innocent Vorthak. On the bridge of the Retribution, Kane's officers looked troubled. "Admiral," said Captain Silva, "we can't attack without risking civilian casualties." "He's got us trapped," Kane smiled grimly. "Has he? Activate the quantum isolation field generators." Around the bridge, officers stared in shock. The quantum isolation field was humanity's most secret technology. It could selectively shut down any electronic device within a large area while leaving others untouched. "Sir," said the chief science officer, "if we use that technology, every species in the galaxy will know we've been holding back our true capabilities." "Good," Kane replied. "It's time they knew what we're really capable of. And why we choose to be gentle." The human fleet took position around Vorthak Prime. From his flagship, Admiral Krovix watched with satisfaction. The humans were hesitating, just as he had predicted. Their weakness would be their downfall. He opened a communication channel to all frequencies. "People of the galaxy," he announced, "see how the humans cower before real strength. They cannot attack me without killing innocents, and they are too weak to." His transmission cut off as every weapon system on his fleet simply stopped working. His shields failed. His engines went dead. All across his fleet, thousands of ships became helpless metal shells floating in space. But the orbital cities were untouched. The space stations continued working normally. Only military vessels were affected by the field. Admiral Kane's voice reached every ship in the system. "Admiral Krovix, you seem to have a technical problem. This field will remain active until you surrender. Your people are safe. Your ships are not." On his disabled flagship, Krovix stared in horror at his dead control panels. The humans had technology that could shut down his entire fleet without harming a single civilian. They had power he had never imagined, and they had chosen not to use it until now. "Impossible," he whispered. "If they had this power, why didn't they use it before?" The answer came from Commander Tektar's voice over the communication system. He was broadcasting from Earth, speaking to all Vorthak. "Because they hoped we would choose to be better," he said. "They showed us mercy not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose it. We could have learned from them. Instead, we killed them for their kindness." Around Vorthak Prime, human ships began boarding the disabled Vorthak vessels. Marines moved through the corridors with practiced precision, searching for one specific target. Admiral Krovix sat in his command chair as human soldiers entered his bridge. They moved like professionals, weapons ready but not threatening unless threatened first. The leader of the boarding party, a human colonel named Martinez, stepped forward. "Admiral Krovix," he said formally, "by the authority of the Galactic Medical Neutrality Accords, you are under arrest for war crimes. You will be given a fair trial according to galactic law." Krovix looked around at his disabled bridge, his captured officers, his helpless fleet. The humans had beaten him so completely that it was almost funny. "Your mercy is still weakness," he said with bitter defiance. Colonel Martinez looked at him with calm eyes. "Our mercy is a choice, Admiral. Our strength is why we can afford to make it. Today you learned the difference." As Krovix was led away in restraints, he finally understood what the humans had been trying to teach the galaxy. Mercy was not the absence of strength. It was strength so great that violence became a choice rather than a necessity. A choice that could be withdrawn when someone broke the most, say. The trial of Admiral Krovix took place on Neutral Station 7, where representatives from every major species in the galaxy gathered to witness justice. The courtroom was filled with beings who had never agreed on anything, but today they were united in their shock at what the Vorthak Admiral had done. Judge Veltar, an ancient Altarian with silver skin and wise eyes, presided over the proceedings. She had served as a galactic judge for over 200 years and had never seen evidence of such clear war crimes. Admiral Krovix sat in the defendant's chair, still defiant despite his capture. His forearms were restrained, but his black eyes burned with anger. Even now he showed no remorse for what he had done. "Admiral Krovix," Judge Veltar began, "you are charged with the murder of medical personnel. the destruction of a marked hospital ship, and violations of the Galactic Medical Neutrality Accords. How do you plead? Krovex's voice echoed through the courtroom. I plead that I am a warrior of the Vorthak Empire. I do not recognize the authority of this court. The court recognizes your plea as not guilty, the judge replied calmly. The prosecution may present their evidence. Ambassador Zara Okafor stood and activated the main display. The recordings from the Mercy's Grace began to play once again. Even though everyone had seen them before, the courtroom fell silent as they watched the murder of doctors and patients. When the video showed Dr. Sarah Chen being shot while protecting her patients, several beings in the audience began to cry. When it showed the children being killed in their hospital beds, even the most hardened military officers looked away. This is what Admiral Krovex calls warfare, Ambassador Okafor said when the recording ended. The systematic murder of healers and patients. The destruction of everything that separates us from animals. The defense lawyer, a Vorthak attorney named Teklon, tried his best to defend his client, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings showed everything clearly. There was no doubt about what had happened. Commander Thektar testified about what he had witnessed on the Mercy's Grace. Despite his own injuries, he spoke clearly about how the humans had saved his people and how Admiral Krovex had repaid that mercy with murder. The humans could have left us to die, Thektar said. They could have taken us prisoner. Instead, they risked their own lives to save ours. And when Admiral Krovex learned of this kindness, he decided it was a weakness to be destroyed. Dr. James Chen, father of the murdered Dr. Sarah Chen, gave testimony about his daughter's work on hospital ships. His voice was quiet and controlled, but his pain was obvious to everyone listening. My daughter saved over 3,000 lives during her service on medical ships, he said. She saved humans, Vorthak, Zephyrian, and dozens of other species. She believed that all life was precious. She died protecting patients who could not protect themselves. When it came time for Admiral Krovex to testify, he showed no remorse. I am a warrior, he declared. I fight for the strength and honor of my people. The humans were making my people weak with their false mercy. I stopped this weakness from spreading. Judge Veltar looked at him with disgust. You murdered children in hospital beds. You killed doctors who were trying to heal the wounded. How is this honorable? Honor is victory, Krovex replied. Everything else is the luxury of the weak. The trial lasted for 3 days. When it ended, the verdict was unanimous from all 12 judges representing different species. Admiral Krovex was guilty of war crimes against every standard of galactic civilization. Judge Veltar read the sentence in a voice that carried across the galaxy. Admiral Krovex, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment on the prison world of Tartarus. You will never again command troops or threaten innocent beings. As Krovex was led away, he shouted one final defiant message. You think you have won, but you have only proven that mercy is weakness. The strong will always rule. But his words fell on deaf ears. The galaxy had seen what real strength looked like when the human fleet disabled his entire armada without harming a single civilian. Back on Earth, Admiral Marcus Kane stood in the garden of the Sol Defense headquarters looking up at the stars. The war was over. Justice had been served, but the cost had been terrible. Commander Sarah Potter found him there as the sun was setting. Admiral, she said quietly, the final casualty reports are in. 1,837 people died on the Mercy's Grace, but in the war that followed, we only lost 43 more people, and we saved over 8,000 Vorthak prisoners. Kane nodded slowly. Dr. Chen and her people didn't die for nothing then. No, sir. The new Vorthak government wants to make peace. Commander Thektar has been elected as their new leader. He's promising major reforms. Kane turned to look at her. And what about the other species? The Zephyrian Collective wants to establish joint medical programs with us. The Altarians are asking for human doctors to help with a plague on their outer worlds. Even the Corvin clans are requesting medical aid. Kane smiled for the first time in months. So the Mercy's Grace accomplished its mission after all. On Vorthak Prime, the new government was already making changes. Commander Thektar, now called Prime Leader Thektar, signed a formal apology to the families of those killed on the hospital ship. More importantly, he established new laws protecting medical personnel and ships. We have learned a terrible lesson, he announced to his people. Strength without mercy is not strength at all. It is brutality. From this day forward, the Vorthak Empire will protect healers, not murder them. The speech was broadcast across Vorthak space. On many worlds, Vorthak citizens who had been saved by human doctors wept as they listened. They finally understood what their leaders had thrown away in pursuit of empty glory. 3 months later, a new ship was launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. It was twice the size of the original Mercy's Grace and carried the most advanced medical equipment in the galaxy. The ship's name was painted in large letters on its white hull: UESS Mercy's Grace II. Captain Elena Rodriguez, a young officer who had served under Elena Vasquez, stood on the bridge as the ship prepared for its first mission. She had volunteered for the assignment despite knowing the risks. "Captain," called her communications officer, "we're receiving our first distress call. A Vorthak transport has been damaged in an asteroid field. They have wounded on board." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "Set course for the transport and send a message to their captain. Help is on the way." As the new Mercy's Grace moved toward its first rescue mission, its crew prepared to continue the work that Dr. Sarah Chen and her people had died for. They would heal the wounded, save lives, and show the galaxy that humanity's mercy was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. On the prison world of Tartarus, Admiral Krovek sat in his cell and watched news reports of the new hospital ship. He saw Vorthak and human doctors working together to save lives. He saw former enemies becoming allies through shared compassion. For the first time since his capture, doubt crept into his mind. Had he been wrong? Had he destroyed something precious in his pursuit of what he thought was strength? The doubt lasted only a moment before his pride pushed it away. But it was enough to plant a seed that would grow in the years to come. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Mercy was not the absence of strength. It was strength so great that violence became a choice. And when that mercy was repaid with cruelty, the consequences were swift and absolute. On Earth, a memorial was built to honor those who died on the original Mercy's Grace. The inscription was simple but powerful. They showed mercy to the unmerciful and died for their compassion. Their sacrifice taught the galaxy that some lines must never be crossed. Below the words was a list of names: doctors, nurses, patients, and one Vorthak commander who had tried to protect them. All remembered together as heroes who had died defending the idea that every life was worth saving. Dr. James Chen visited the memorial every week, leaving flowers for his daughter Sarah. On his last visit before his own death years later, he was joined by an unexpected figure. Prime Leader Thektar had come to Earth for a medical conference. When he learned about the memorial, he insisted on paying his respects. "Your daughter saved my life," he told Dr. Chen. "Not just physically, but spiritually. She showed me what my people could become." Dr. Chen nodded, tears in his eyes. She would be happy to know that her death made a difference. "It made all the difference," Thektar replied. "Because of her sacrifice and the sacrifice of all who died on the Mercy's Grace, the galaxy is a better place." As the two old beings stood before the memorial, ships passed overhead carrying doctors and medical supplies to worlds across the galaxy. The work continued. The healing continued, and somewhere among the stars, humanity's hospital ships moved through space with their red crosses shining like beacons of hope, proving every day that the strongest beings in the universe were those who chose to help others rather than harm them. The galaxy would never forget the lesson of the Mercy's Grace, that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to heal, and that when that wisdom is threatened, the consequences are as swift and certain as the stars themselves.